Good morning. Welcome to the Crossroads report on child homelessness in Utah. We are gathered today to let you know how you can make a difference in the lives of our children as they deal with homelessness in incredible rates and continue to face that. We want to make a difference and want to make a change. We have an important opportunity this year as citizen voters that we should not waste. We are about to vote to elect persons who will represent us and act on our behalf for the sake of the children of Utah. My name is Reverend Vinnetta Golphin Wilkerson. I am the pastor of Granger Community Christian Church located in West Valley City. I have lived in Utah for just under 10 years. And one of the reasons I'm glad to call Utah home is our shared values. Across the breadth of our faith systems, social locations, and political affiliations, we all prioritize families for the sake of the children. As we consider how we will cast our votes for governor, we want to be sure that the person elected has consistent values with the family values of our state. The people we elect to represent us and manage the complex and competing priorities of bringing in new business, balancing budgets, of providing healthcare in our communities, those people need our help. They need to hear us say that we want a governor who will be a leader in the area of homelessness for the sake of the children. They need to hear you and hear me say that families should come first, that families are the highest priority for the sake of the children. The next governor needs to know when he walks into meetings to negotiate and compromise to accomplish the legislation and do the work of government, they need to know that we expect the needs of children who live without the security of stable housing should come first. Our next governor needs to hear our voices, needs to hear us say that we want them to prioritize families who are homeless. We want our children to succeed in school instead of being kept back and pushed down and discouraged because of events of homelessness in their lives. We want our children to be healthy physically and emotionally. Being homeless, whether it's one time or several times, causes incredible impacts on children's psyche and their ability to grow with confidence and to flourish into the goals and things that they should be able to do, that they were created to do. We want our children to live in safe homes without having to accept domestic violence as a condition of having a place to live. We want our governor to be creative, to be innovative, and to be wise in leading to set solutions to prevent recurring homelessness for our children. Now, the question is, how can we help our governor and our legislatures to know our priorities? First, I invite you to read the report. It will be available to you online, and it will be available to you by email. And if you don't get it any other way, let us know, we'll get it to you. Read the report, the facts are there. Second, call the candidates. Everybody who's running for office has several ways for you to reach out to them. They have an email, they have a post office address, they have websites. Tell them that families come first. They need to hear it from you. And lastly, for many of these candidates, they're going to have forums. They're going to have opportunities where you can walk up to them, tell them your name, say I'm a voter and I want families first for the sake of the children. Thank you very much. And we hope you will get busy and support the families who are dealing with homelessness for the sake of the children.
Thank you so much, Pastor Vinnetta. That I am really grateful that you've agreed to help us release this report on child homelessness in Utah. My name is Tibbitts. I'm the Associate Director at Crossroads Urban Center. We also have with us Father Elias Koucous.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Thank you so much for helping. We're live on Facebook Live, so I will start talking about the report if that's okay. because I think actually it's really an important year to be looking at the needs of homeless children because this has been a particularly hard year for homeless children in the state of Utah. We have there have been I think this has been with the COVID-19 pandemic. We have there have been children and families that have been afraid to go to shelter. There you have children staying in unsafe situations. I think this has contributed to an increase in in children and women staying in domestic violence situations. There's been a surge around the state in calls to police departments about domestic violence incidents. I think it is in addition to those factors, we have had 2 school years disrupted. The last school year ended early. This school year is beginning late in some places and has a distance learning component in most places. And if you don't have a home, don't have a stable Wi-Fi connection, don't have a tablet, don't have a computer, don't have a place where you can go by yourself and use that tablet or computer, it's very hard to participate. And so, you know, kids are falling behind. And I think the research is very clear that homeless children are already very likely to fall behind in school. We'll talk about that more in a second. And so this report really isn't focused on how the state can better respond to the pandemic because there's not a lot of data on how states have responded to the pandemic in the past. This is something new. And so what we are instead doing is talking about how we can better stabilize children, particularly those most impacted by homelessness, because those are the people who, if we don't stabilize their housing situation, if we don't do a better job stabilizing their housing situation than we have in the past, they are behind, and they're going to fall further behind in ways that will have long-term impacts for them and for our whole state. And so the first big number that we found is that in the last 3 years, there were 14,002 people and families with children who received homeless services in Utah. We talk about child homelessness, but those people are still in our state, and that they have been homeless recently enough that we should all be concerned. Many of those people are very, very young, children ages 6 and younger. There were 4,254 children aged 6 and younger who were among that 14,002 people from families who've been homeless in the last 3 years. I think the research shows that the negative impacts of homelessness on children are severe, that they can have physical health problems, emotional health problems, can impact educational attainment. All of those impacts are higher when the homelessness happens during those early years when so much development takes place. And so we should all be very concerned that so many very young children are becoming homeless in Utah. This isn't surprising because when you look at national data, the most common time for a person in the United States to become homeless is during the first year of life. Infants have the highest rate of homelessness of any subgroup in the country. The second highest period for homelessness in our country is during the next 5 years when children are aged 1 to 6. It makes sense if you think about it, because the younger the child is, the younger the parent is, the less resources that parent has. And you often have, in our state and in other places of the country, you have homeless parents who were homeless when they became parents and are still homeless after becoming parents. And I think, and so those children start out behind and probably end up in some of the categories we're going to talk about now, which are children who have extended and repeated experiences of homelessness. There were 136 people and families with children in Utah who were homeless for 6 months or longer. Last year, during the previous 3 years, there were 420 people from families with children who were homeless for 6 months or longer. And I think that means that they went to the shelter and it took them 6 months or longer to find a place to go from the shelter. And so there were also last year 239 people and families with children who became homeless during the year, who that instance of homelessness was the fourth or fifth or some higher number time that they had become homeless during the past 3 years. And so there is a large group of children in our state who are being homeless for extended periods of time, repeated periods of time. And again, there's research on the negative health and educational attainment impacts of homelessness on children. All of those impacts become worse when the period of homelessness is extended or when it's repeated, so that just as soon as a child recovers from the trauma of sleeping in the same room as a bunch of strangers, they're doing the same thing again, right? I mean, children are resilient, children can heal, but you can't heal from trauma when the trauma isn't over. And I think, I mean, it really is important to remember that homeless children have often been exposed to the domestic violence and other forms of trauma before going to the shelter. On the night of the 2020 point in time count for all homeless people in Utah, at the beginning of this year, there were 331 children who were living in a shelter for survivors of domestic violence. We did a survey of homeless moms in Salt Lake County 3 years ago and found that 66% of the moms we interviewed had a history of domestic violence. So there are a lot of people who are entering, a lot of families and parents entering into homelessness who have a history of trauma, sometimes a very recent history of trauma. The research shows that being homeless by itself is traumatic for children, that that uncertainty of not knowing who's going to be in the room with them when they sleep, they're not knowing what those people are going to do, can be, takes time for children to recover from. So not surprisingly, that trauma impacts kids' health, it impacts their ability to complete school. There's research that says that that children with an experience of homelessness are up to 9 times more likely to be held back in school for a grade. I think there's additional research showing that children who are held back for a grade are also more likely to not finish high school, and so it makes sense. I mean, that you get behind and then you get further behind, and it becomes too frustrating to keep going. So that and I think that's something that we really need to think about right now when we have kids who are already behind because of their experience of homelessness, who now have had 2 school years disrupted. So that's sort of the big picture on how things look with child homelessness in Utah. We, having looked at this data and looked at what's happening in some other places, we've come up with 3 or 4 recommendations for ways that the next governor and other state leaders can work to improve outcomes for kids who are experiencing homelessness this year. One is to produce 200 units of supportive housing for families with extended or repeated experiences of homelessness. I think I've been working here at Crossroads Urban Center since 2001. And so I have seen the impact that permanent supportive housing can have on childless adults. I've seen people who I thought were never going to leave the streets be moved into permanent supportive housing, and their lives changed. Their health improved. And I think that I believe in that model. However, that model is that housing that we have, and primarily in Salt Lake County, is based on a national model, and it really is designed to meet the needs of childless adults, often in their 40s and 50s, who have extensive histories of homelessness, but also extensive histories of mental illness. The needs that those people face are important, but they're not the same as the needs of a single mom who's 19 and was homeless for most of her pregnancy. And they certainly are different than the needs of her child, right? I mean, and so what we need is family supportive housing that's child-centered, that has childcare on site, that has medical services on site. We're doing some really interesting work with providing nursing services and mental health services on site and permanent supportive housing for childless adults. We need to come up with a way to bring to check in on people when they move into this family supportive housing. And we need to make sure that this housing is that the projects that have this housing have a strong connection with local schools, so that, you know, the kids who've been through this extended and repeated experience of homelessness have a school that's nurturing for them. Our second recommendation is to capitalize on full Medicaid expansion by connecting all parents who become homeless with medical services they need to move forward with their lives and avoid repeated experiences of homelessness. One of the reasons that we've seen people have repeated experiences of homelessness is there's not been a consistent way to check in on families that have been at a shelter to see how they're doing. And so, you know, there are families we know they've been to the shelter 2 times, 3 times, and there's nobody who's funded to check in on those families. Well, with Medicaid expansion, we could have social workers meet with people, find out what services they need, what physical services, what mental health services they need, and connect them with those services so that hopefully they're meeting with their medical team. They continue to meet with their medical team when they leave services, and there's somebody who knows their name who can follow up with them in 3 months after they've left the shelter to see how things are going. I think it doesn't do any good to expand Medicaid if the people who opt into the program don't use any of the services. We know homeless children with an experience of homelessness have medical needs other kids don't have. And so we should do our best to connect them and their parents with those services. Our third recommendation is to reduce the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic by continuing pandemic rental assistance programs that have just started up and the state could also help school districts to identify and assist children who have fallen behind in school due to homelessness. We've talked about those things a lot. I think we really need to bring everyone we can together, and this is where the state leadership and the governor leadership from the state can be so helpful, is to say, okay, we know kids are falling behind. We need to find out who those kids are and help them, at least at a minimum, help them not fall further behind. Our last recommendation is to work with Utah's congressional delegation to increase federal funding for housing for low-income families and vouchers to help families at risk of becoming homeless. There's almost no affordable housing that's built in Utah that doesn't include some federal funding. There has been talk from both presidential candidates about doing an infrastructure bill. Funding for building housing could be included in that infrastructure bill. There are lots of bills that are actually already drafted in Congress that are probably not going to get a hearing this year, but that could come up next year. There will be opportunities for our federal delegation to be engaged, and I think it's the responsibility of the next governor and to help them know how that funding will be, if it comes to Utah, it'll be used to reduce child homelessness. If you have questions about the report, please reach out to me at Crossroads Urban Center. You can find a copy of the report, the full report, at our website, crossroadsurbancenter.org/report. I'm going to turn the time over to Father Elias because he has graciously agreed to come and help us talk about this report. I talked longer than I was planning on, so thank you all for sticking with us.
Good morning again, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Good morning again, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with you today, and I hope you're all doing well and staying safe and healthy. Thank you, Bill, for your continued efforts in bringing people of faith together to be a voice on issues of human rights and giving us the opportunity today to speak. I'm honored to share this presentation with Pastor Vinnetta. Good morning, Pastor. I have the deepest respect and admiration for you both, and I'm honored to have been asked to join you today. With the release of the 2020 Child Homelessness Report, I would like to raise the question if we really see them. We see the homeless in our parks, vacant lots, under bridges, and on the streets. As we view these disenfranchised populations, and especially our youth and children, we thankfully have a growing interest in addressing the challenges of these very fragile populations. And thanks to, and in great part to, the Child Homelessness Report in Salt Lake County for 2020, we have additional data to see the situation. But do we really see them? Our moral and ethical standards of love, respect, equality demand the heighten our attention on these unfortunately growing populations, ensuring that we provide for a child's physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and social development. Homelessness denies all these rights. We need to actually see these children and make an effort to get to know them. We, as a caring and nurturing and compassionate society, need to help change their lives by creating a relationship with them and by building trust during these challenging times. We need to take initiatives to assist this very vulnerable population with not only shelters and housing that provide safety, health, care, counseling, education, vocational training, and other social services, but providing the same initiatives in keeping families together, as the released report states. However, I would like to add that we need to make an effort to find out and listen to these individuals' concerns and situations that have put them in this vulnerable predicament and from the current pandemic. It's been said we need to be more than just a kitchen cook. We need to be at the tables with the people. Let us show the much needed love and concern we have for our fellow human beings by listening to our homeless friends and bring what we learn to our public officials. By truly listening and sharing this information, we can provide the assistance for their present concerns. We should also take the bull by the horns and help the homeless children by volunteering in shelters and in programs and reaching out to those on the streets. We need to provide the vital necessities that will help to protect them from contracting this virus that is so easily contracted. Let our love be generous and unselfish and commit to these members of our community. As we read in Scripture, we need to use our God-given gifts to serve others. We are the hands of God in doing His work here on earth. We need to have this love carry forward in donating resources to the organizations that help and work with these homeless and street populations. We need to participate in legislative efforts by writing and calling our congressional and local representatives, urging them to support increased funding, both locally and nationally. And as I've mentioned, we need to become aware of the concerns and circumstances of these, our fellow human beings, and bring them to light. This allows us to raise awareness to not only government representatives, but our peers, colleagues, students, teachers, family members, and all others around us. Let us be looked at by how we care for and how we provide for our most vulnerable and most valuable members of our human family, our children. We need to give every child the chance to succeed. Our efforts should also look at assuring we select representatives that align with our moral and ethical responsibilities to provide for the well-being and welfare of families who are in need. We should advocate for policies that will bring about the greatest good for people. We need to think of others rather than ourselves and instill a sense of love for all around us. This should be the motivating factor and provide for us the genuine concern for the welfare of others. Our work begins now. We need to do everything in our power to bring light and awareness to this vital issue. Start today in contacting your legislators in providing the necessary resources needed in housing, healthcare, education, and counseling, along with a mentor program that includes our volunteering. We need to continue to bring these solutions to our peers, colleagues, family, friends, and encourage them to advocate for these solutions. To paraphrase from Mr. Rogers, all of us at some time or another need help. Whether we are giving or receiving help, each one of us has something valuable to bring to this world. That's one of the things that connects us as neighbors. We should sense how important we are to the lives of those we meet, how important we can be to the people we meet may never even dream of. There should be something that we leave at every meeting with another person. When we love our neighbor, we love God. As the 2020 report states, let our focus be on ways homeless services in Utah can better stabilize homelessness families with children. And let our efforts begin today to mitigate these problems in future years. Let's choose them. Let's choose the children. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone, for help. Thank you both Father Elias and Pastor Vinnetta for helping to spotlight, to draw attention to this. I again encourage people to go to the Crossroads Urban Center website, www.crossroadsurbancenter.org/report, and you can see the full report. This is an election year, so there's lots of candidates for elected office who you can talk to about child homelessness. After the elections are over, we have a project called the Coalition of Religious Communities that works to talk to elected officials about issues like this one. In fact, not like this one, about this exact issue. So we have an email list for that project that's on our website. Please get involved. Thank you. I think we're done. I seem to have locked the screen on myself, which makes it hard for, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, but I did. Thank you both, Father Elias and Pastor Vinnetta, for helping us release the report today. I guess we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.